Welcome to Lens Lessons. Today I want to talk about black and whites. So we're going to use this image as an example, and right away I'm going to make several virtual copies by going Command quotation or Control quotation. Okay, we'll start with the first one, go into Develop. Now you think about black and white, you think, okay, it's as simple as dragging my saturation all the way down. Boom, black and white. And that's true, and yet it looks a little bit flat. And this image to begin with had quite a bit of contrast on its own, but imagine if it didn't. Most images, when you desaturate, it looks like this. Nothing wrong with that, but it loses a little bit of dimension. Versus, for example, if you first desaturate it and then add contrast, and for me, I like to bring the highlights back a little bit, suddenly has a little bit more pop compared to this one, for example. So, what we refer to an image like this in the photo industry as something that's a bit muddy. And personally, I like to stay away from muddy black and whites. So I like to add a little bit of contrast like so. That being said, beyond that, there's still some other styles that you can do as well. So for example, let's desaturate this again. And we'll bring up the contrast. So we start with like a nice base. And here you can add a little bit more of like an artistic effect. So for example, if you want to go for something dark and moody, I usually just bring my exposure all the way down, and then I bring my highlights up. And if you want something even more detailed and specific, you can use one of these localized adjustments up here to add a little bit. I always have to invert it. You can add a little bit back to her, like so. So when you get moody, you have to kind of reapply the focus back to the subject. And you can even go crazier than that, because the moody thing is really trendy right now. So you can basically go as moody as you feel like. I prefer to have a little bit more emphasis on my subject. So I just kind of play around with exposure and highlights to make sure that she's still kind of the main event here. And then I might go in closer and really kind of focus more on other things, like her face a bit more. Kind of like double up my localized adjustment here. And I can see by my navigator how intense it's being, so I don't want to make it obvious, but I do want to add something special. And I can always like go into my brush and just kind of like bring back a little bit of some lightness into her eye. And that kind of gives a little bit of a pop. So that's more of like a moody setting. And I might even just make it a bit moodier. And this was a bit too intense for me, so I'm just going to like take that down a little bit more. Great. Now let's say you want to go for something more high key. So this is dark and moody, kind of muted. If you want something high key, basically you start with a nice contrasted image, and then you want to bring up your shadows quite a bit. And then oftentimes you want to bring up your exposure as well and lower your blacks. And high key will sometimes eliminate some information in the white areas. So I'll try to bring the white areas back by lowering my highlights a little bit. And sometimes you can play with your whites on here as well. Clipping my whites like this, kind of making it more muted, gives a bit of a film effect. So this is more of like a high key image, and then my blacks got to be kind of like lighter like this. So just kind of play around until you find something that works. The trick is to make sure there's lots of contrast while also focusing on the overall like light and airy feel of the image. So this would be like more of a high key look. And high key usually suits minimal backgrounds the best. So if she was just on like a white background or a black background, that would be easier. Especially white backgrounds lend itself very well to high key looks. And then that being said, you can really experiment with whatever. So now you can go down to your tone curve if you want to experiment with more like a film effect. And you can raise the shadows here. I like to do like a bit of a J curve. Kind of gives it that like kind of flat like film look. And then you can also adjust this to like really pop those highlights, maybe not that much. So this is more of like a film, like muted J curve look. And then someone with freckles, like this girl here, her name's Ashley. I absolutely love her freckles, so to really make those pop, you can do that. So you can also just click black and white. So I was going to color and just desaturating it. But black and white, you can also kind of experiment a little bit with like clarity and other things down there to really help you out. Personally, I don't like doing clarity normally on the entire face, but black and whites can be a little more forgiving with that. So there you go. Now we have 6 different black and whites to choose from. If we just kind of review all those together, you can kind of see how different they all are, like so. So all of these are totally fine, whatever your style is, whatever you like. Personally, I just would stay away from the muddy black and white, which doesn't have that much contrast to it. I mean, sometimes you can pull it off. Like, I don't hate it on this image like I have on other photos, because I think it had some natural contrast to begin with, but totally up to you. So you can take your pick to whatever style you like. Hope this was helpful.